What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over several tips to hopefully help you play better and stop losing to the Myst Gauntlets in Fortnite Chapter 6 Season 3. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, comment down below what you think of these gauntlets, and if you would like to use my code in the item shop, it is EvolveJake, and it is underneath the webcam at all times. So the Myst Gauntlets, I think, have been one of the more items I've seen raged about most or complained about most within the Fortnite community this season. That and the Storm Beast, which I already made one of these videos for the Storm Beast. In short, these gauntlets kill incredibly fast, and they aren't very difficult to use because it's not like something that you really have to aim or, hit headshots with to actually melt the opponents. You just look at the person, hold your fire button, a bunch of birds come out, and then hopefully you get the elimination. And its main kind of drawbacks are going to be that its range is not really that great, and the mobility of the player using it is also incredibly limited, and that's what we want to kind of focus on when it comes to playing against this item. It's very limited in range, so if you just don't opt into fights versus them up close, you're going to have a much easier time playing the game. Now, obviously, that's easier said than done. One of the things that makes this item increasingly difficult for a lot of players to play against is that you can combine it with the cape. And so when you combine it with the cape, the gloves get more damage, which is nice, but the cape also serves as like an easy entry point for people to just jump on somebody with the gloves. They go into the bird form, they can't be damaged, they land on somebody, they're just stuffing them with the birds, and then the fight's over. And it feels very random, and even if you were trying to avoid the close range fights versus it, you might just have it happen to you. You know what I mean? The cape is pretty quiet. One thing that can make getting caught off guard by it happen a little less frequently is going to be the visualize sound effects setting in the audio section of the settings. This setting is incredibly overpowered, and most serious players have it on anyways, but it's really good versus this cape because you'll get a little indicator on your screen of when somebody's flying around using it near you in situations where maybe you wouldn't have really been aware that someone was using it because it is a more stealthy item. So visualize sound effects can help make you aware of when someone's landing on you with the cape. I think another reason why this happens is that a lot of players see the bird flying at them, like the player using the cape, and then they just aim at it and think like, I'm going to get shots on this person as soon as they exit the bird form. And what happens when you do that is you're like aimed in, they're falling out of the sky and landing on you with the gloves. You're just letting them engage on you with the bird or with the gloves, or with the cape, sorry. You're letting them get on you with the cape because you're just like kind of tunnel visioned on hard aiming the bird and trying to punish it. When in reality, if you see a bird flying at you, what you want to do is actually reposition yourself in hopes that they actually chase you. As I said, you don't want to opt into that close range fight versus them. A lot of these players relying on the cape and the birds aren't the greatest. So if you just start using your base boost gloves to get away when they're flying at you, you only have to use a charge or two to completely get away because the duration of the cape doesn't last that long. Now you've avoided getting landed on, and best case scenario for you would be they kind of over chase you with the bird, and then it kind of runs out in a situation where they're in no man's land, and you can just kind of switch to your ranged weapon and melt them down while they don't really have much cover. And as I touched on, a lot of the people really relying on the cape and the birds aren't the greatest players, and so you often will get these chances where you bait them into a really bad situation for themselves. But even if that doesn't happen, avoiding them just landing on you with the gloves is better than, that happening and you just getting 250 to 0'd because the birds kill incredibly fast. So just reposition proactively when you see the birds trying to land on you, and your life will be a lot easier. If you do have to fight them, it's going to be a struggle. Even if you play perfectly, there will probably be times where you do end up having to fight someone using these gloves in close range. As I touched on earlier, what the downside of these gloves is its range and its mobility, because the player shooting the birds doesn't have much movement. And so you want to use your own movement to your advantage when dealing with these glove users. Anytime you're able to get into a situation where you can break the other player's camera, and what this means is you kind of like jump and slide or just and somehow jump in a situation where you like end up behind the player using the gloves. If you can make that happen, your life is going to be a lot easier. And as I said, it's somewhat doable because the mobility on the glove user is so limited. And there's a few things in the loot pool that actually work great for this as well. The core medallion is going to be one of them. If you've watched any of my videos this season, you know I think very highly of the core medallion, but it was recently buffed where your jump is further. But either way, just a sprint jump going up and above the opponent is going to make it harder for them to respond using the gloves. You can easily end up behind them. And the fact that you went invisible will throw a lot of these players off because it's kind of chaotic on their screen anyways. So you can either jump behind them and start, shotgunning them, or kind of sprint jump, land in a slide with this core medallion. And you've created a decent amount of distance with that to the point where the gloves aren't going to be able to do much damage to you, and you can just spray them with your AR. So the core medallion works great versus this. Another thing that works great in basically the same way is going to be the dashes that you can get from the dash sprites. Just activating a dash, it's easy to end up behind the person using the gloves or far enough away to where the gloves aren't doing much damage to you. And then if the enemy using the gloves wants to continue to try to pressure you, that's going to be something that heavily works out in your favor. Using mobility like the base boost gloves can also help if you know that you're having a close range fight versus the birds. You might just want to swap to your gloves and get out of there. This gets a little dicey though, because it does take some time for you to actually use your gloves. And so you'll probably take a lot of damage while doing so, but that might be better than just getting 250 to 0. You might take 160 and then get to survive and, heal up and then have a more normal fight. It's really situational whether or not using your own mobility would be beneficial. But if possible, just get out of there. The fact that you can shoot the base boost gloves at them and knock them away is something that could also be really beneficial. Having a cape of your own in your inventory can also just full counter this item, because as soon as someone's on you with it, with the gloves, you could just swap to your cape, activate your cape, you fly out of there. They might end up chasing you or trying to chase you. That's a problem for later. Maybe you land, take out your base boost gloves, get more distance, but just being able to immediately get out of that like pivotal danger using the cape is something that can save your life in a lot of situations. The cape is an incredible just like get out of jail free card, and using it versus the gloves, while it does combo well with the gloves, it also counters the gloves quite well. So that is something that you can carry to counter this item. The exotic sentinel pump I also really like to have when dealing with this. I like having the exotic sentinel pump all the time. I think it's incredibly good. It has the damage of a legendary, and the icy effect makes it hard for opponents to really do anything to you in a fight. And this is even more true versus the gloves, because as I touched on, their movement is already very limited. So if you hit them with the ice while they're trying to shoot that, they cannot move at all. And that's going to make it very easy for you to like jump and slide away or jump and slide behind them, break their camera in some way. A lot of things in this game are situational, but having the exotic sentinel pump with the ice version ready to go is something that has saved me versus a lot of Myst glove users. And so those are your main counters. I think is just going to be getting away from it and your movement and breaking the enemy's camera, ending up behind them. In general in Fortnite, it's really just not ideal to be forcing close range fights on people without opening damage or without opening shots on them. And this is even more true when we have something like this in the game. Because if you're just hopping on somebody dry and y'all both have 250 health, you might hit a good shotgun shot, swap to your AR, melt them, swap back to your pump, and get the kill that way. And it might work out for you. But if they pull out these gloves and just start melting you and you miss a shot, that's probably going to be the fight. So try not to force those close range fights on people who you don't have any information about. If you've beamed them, then, maybe you can jump on them and force that. If they just were fighting and you're third partying, you might end up in a situation where they hadn't taken any damage at all. But odds are they probably did. And so, that's a situation where you can maybe force the fight. But if things are, as I said, dry, you don't have damage on them, you don't have information on them, you don't really want to be forcing that close range fight, because you're playing into the gloves' main purpose. They want to be full HP, just damaging you with the gloves. And so get your opening tags, force your close range fights after, and you're going to be losing to this item a lot less. Cars do not counter this item well. That is something that a lot of times I talk about cars being useful to counter certain things. Cars do not counter the gloves well. You can maybe create some distance with the car to the point where you escape its range, but it melts through the car. And I feel like anytime I've been in a car trying to deal with this, I just get absolutely melted. So I would not recommend trying to use the car or thinking that the car is going to be an effective counter versus the gloves. I talked earlier about how if you see a bat flying at you, you just want to reposition. The main time I wouldn't want to do that is if I know I have the person weak. Like, let's say I tag somebody for like 100, I'm ARing them, and then they use the cape, and then they're flying at me. at that point, I'm somewhat down to just let them land on me because I already have that opening damage. But if I know nothing about the person and they're trying to land on me with the bird, I'm just trying to get out of there and reset that fight because, as I touched on a few times, oftentimes the players that really rely on this aren't the greatest. And if you can just get them to play more normal Fortnite or avoid the situations where this item really shines, then you're probably going to win out in the long run. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.